These are the 7 things that your avoidant ex is thinking while being in no contact with them. The first is relief. I know this is something that you don't want to hear, but it is the truth. You have to think about what an avoidant is and what they're essentially doing, and that is they are trying to avoid feeling any type of emotions. This is their MO since they've been with you, right? You've experienced this throughout the relationship. So, of course, when they're given an opportunity to not have to do that, they're going to feel a sense of relief. They're going to feel like this is exactly what they want because they're not going to have to worry about opening up or feeling vulnerable or having dealing with any type of conflict, which usually ends up happening when you're going through a breakup. So when they know that you have gone no contact, they feel like this is a good thing. And I know that this is so frustrating for you because you're hoping that this is going to wake them up into realizing that how they are acting in the relationship is causing things to not work out. And maybe this is going to be an opportunity for them to finally start to take things seriously and actually make a change. But you're going to see them almost acting as if there's nothing wrong with them. They're not going to be reaching out to you. They again are going to be thriving in the beginning of going no contact. Number 2 is suppressing emotions. They are going to do everything in their power to try to not feel any unwanted emotions. And those unwanted emotions are missing you, reminiscing, maybe feeling some anxiety about the decision of you both being broken up. These are things that they're going to try to avoid. So they're going to be distracting themselves in their head with different things, like trying to think of other things that don't involve you so that they could essentially distract themselves from those emotions. And this tends to put off this facade like nothing's bothering them. You know, they may start to try to go out and do other things with other people to just continue to try to keep that narrative going that they're okay, they don't need to worry about this, and they don't have to essentially confront those emotions, which is what you are experiencing and going through right now because this is obviously something that is bothering you. But to the avoidant, they aren't going to look at it like that. They are going to do everything in their powers to make sure that they do not have to feel those emotions. Which leads perfectly into number 3, and that is they're going to avoid self-reflection. They are going to convince themselves that they have done nothing wrong. They don't want to confront the reality that they've played a big role in why the relationship didn't work, which tends to be the case. Chances are you have done everything in your power to try to make this relationship work, and they just simply were not willing to meet you to any capacity. They are going to think thoughts like the relationship just didn't work, it's not my fault, things like that. And this is essentially, again, them trying to manipulate what is actually going on. They don't want to realize that because then they're going to realize that they've made a major mistake, which is essentially going to send them down the spiral of feeling unwanted emotions, because then they're going to feel things like anxiety because they're going to lose somebody that they know is really good for them, or longing for you in the relationship again. Whatever it is that they don't want to feel, they are going to spin it because, again, they know that that self-reflection is going to hold them accountable and make them realize that they are the problem, which they know to some capacity, but they are always trying to spin this to make themselves feel good for the way that they are, because they don't essentially want to do the things that they need to do to actually heal from this type of attachment. Number 4 is that they're going to start to become curious about you. This is usually around the time where they'll start to have thoughts of thinking about you and what you're doing, and, you know, are you moved on? All these different things to start to realize and kick in the magnitude of what's going on, right? They are not grieving the relationship like you. They haven't been realizing the severity of the breakup. They've kind of just been chalking it aside and not really taking it seriously, because that, again, is keeping this narrative going and keeping them from having to experience those unwanted emotions. So this tends to be where the inevitable starts to settle in, and that they are going to have to confront this reality. There is only so much that they can suppress here, and this is where it starts to seep in. And they start to come to the realization that they could be losing you and you could be moving on. And this starts to scare them a little bit here, because deep down they know that you are so amazing to them and you are so patient. You know, you're doing everything that you can to try to make this work. So they essentially start to get a little bit scared here, because you are a form of safety to them as well. They do feel comfortable to you in some degree, to, you know, how the relationship was and who you are and all these different things. And there is a part of them that still loves you, and this what tends to start to get them curious about, you know, what you're doing and wanting to have somewhat of a connection to you to understand if you are moving on or what that might look like for you. Which segues perfectly into number 5, and that is they start to have conflicting emotions. This is where those unwanted emotions start to come up, and it becomes harder and harder for them to suppress them down because, again, like we've all experienced at some point in time, if we have some strong emotions, there's only so much and so long that we can do to try to suppress that down before they burst out into some other emotion or they start to seep out, just like what's happening with the avoidant. So they start to go through these kind of weird emotional roller coasters where they seem to be like they're doing their own avoidant stuff where they're not feeling anything, they're good, they're fine, and then they drop down and feel, anxious, or they feel a little bit depressed because they no longer have contact to you and they're facing the reality that the relationship could be over. So this is where they start to kind of want to make some kind of move potentially, and they want to see if there's a chance that they can make the relationship work. But what usually suppresses this and does a really good job, and why you don't see them reaching out to you, is that they've come to the realization that they have this big fear of rejection. And because they have this big fear of rejection, they don't want to put themselves on the line to reach out to you and then you respond back that you have no desire to want to make the relationship work, or you've moved on, whatever it might be that they're telling themselves that could potentially happen here. They want to avoid that rejection. And that tends to be how they're able to still suppress it and stop it at a certain point to where they're not reaching out to you and it seems like they're just, again, thriving here. But this is where that realization is starting to grow to where they're coming to an understanding that this may be a bad thing and they need to try to do something to try to work it out with you. Number 6 is rationalizing the breakup. This is where they're trying to spin the breakup as actually being a good thing. If you were in their head, you would hear them say things like, this breakup is actually better for the both of us, even though that may not necessarily be true, because if this person was actually willing to do the things that was needed to work with you, the relationship would work and you guys would be in a better place, and you'd get to a point where the relationship would be a great thing for the both of you. But they're not trying to look at it from that vantage point, because again, they know that in order to get to that point, they're going to have to do some very tough things and go dig deep down into understanding why they're being this way and what is causing them to be an avoidant. And they just simply have no desire to do that. So they'll just try to think these thoughts to convince themselves that the breakup is good for the both of you and it's what you both really wanted, and all these different things that are just really meant, again, to make them feel good about going through this breakup and continuing to go no contact with you. And number 7 is testing the waters. This is where they start challenging themselves and thinking about whether they should try to reach out to you. This tends to be where it all is starting to hit them, where they're starting to realize more and more that you're actually probably going to lose you and that this is actually a bad thing for them, and they're wanting to start to question if they should continue to do the things that they're doing as an avoidant, or should they break that and try to reach out to you and see if there's a chance of making things work. Now, this could come from 2 different places. It could come from one genuine place of wanting to try to make the relationship work, or it could come from a place of them having some kind of anxiety of losing you and they don't want to do that because you are some form of safety. This typically is where you would really see that person reaching out to you, because they get to a point where they've convinced themselves enough that they want to try to make things work for whatever reason that they have. But what you have to in that moment question and ask yourself is this a legitimate opportunity for you guys to actually try to make the relationship work? Or again, is this something that they're trying to do to just keep you on the hook and they're just going to go through the same exact cycle over and over again? You have to be honest with yourself in what that answer is, because you don't deserve to have to keep getting put through this cycle. You have done enough. You've tried everything that you possibly can to make this work, and they've simply, for whatever reason that they have, not been able to work through this. And that is not on you. That is on them. They need to figure this out and finally commit to working on this. but you have to prioritize yourself and figuring out what is best for you. And chances are, what is best for you is figuring out what you need to do to move on, heal, and thrive again from this relationship. I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.